Hello friends and welcome to Sustainable Prepping, your home for fear-free emergency preparedness and a sustainable life. My name is Brecky and today I want to walk you through some different tips and tricks for creating some short-term storage for your food storage if you don't have the income to invest in all of the Mylar and food grade buckets. If you're new here, I want to say a great big welcome. I'm glad you found my slice of the internet. If you're not new, I want to say welcome back. We are back in the swing of things and I'm bringing you lots of good fear-free emergency preparedness content. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my videos coming up. I post videos on Tuesdays and Fridays. All right, so I've had this request in my Facebook group and I've had this request on Instagram and I've had this request in the videos, and that is, how do we afford both the food that goes into our food storage and the storage, right? If you are prepping for long-term food storage, that means really a year or more of food storage security. You need to have several items in place, and those items can get expensive. For example, you need to have Mylar bags. Now this is 5-gallon Mylar bags that you would put in a food grade bucket, and you would put rice or beans or pasta or other items in here to store long term. But these aren't cheap. You also want to get oxygen absorbers to help absorb the oxygen from the Mylar bags in order to keep your food fresh and well preserved for as long as possible. But these items are costly, and for folks who have a very limited budget, they have to choose between buying food and buying the storage. So what can you do as you are building up your food storage before you have the money to invest in some of these long-term storage pieces? I'm going to give you a few tips. These are designed to be short-term solutions so that you can save up the money to move things to long-term, and we'll talk about how you could cycle that at the end of the video. The first and most important thing to realize is that you have enemies of food storage, okay? And everything that you are doing is to mitigate losing the money you've invested in food storage. So your enemies of food storage are light, which can degrade the nutrient content of your food, and it can also, if there is any fungus or anything present, cause those things to start growing. So we want to mitigate light. We want to mitigate moisture, right? Because that will cause your food storage to rot. We want to mitigate heat because that could cause any of the microscopic insects in your dried food storage. And yes, it's in everything, even organic. You're going to have microscopic tiny larvae eggs that you don't see until they hatch. So we want to mitigate heat to keep that from happening. And then we want to mitigate pests. This is bugs, this is rodents, this is pets, this is other people in your household, right? We want to mitigate the creatures who might disrupt your food storage and expose it to air, moisture, or heat, who might eat it and might contaminate it. So we are trying to prevent light, moisture, heat, and critters from getting to our food storage. Those are our 4 major enemies of food storage. If you think about that in mind, everything that we're going to talk about is going to help mitigate at least 3 of those 4. Okay, so we're going to be able to mitigate at least 3 of those 4, and some of those are going to be circumstantial. Where you store the food, for example, will be, you can take care of things like light and heat. So you have to make decisions once you store it about where you're going to place the food once you've put it into its storage containers. But as far as containing it, putting it in containers for storage, I'm going to give you some short-term ideas that are cost-effective so that you can then save for those longer-term food storage that will really mitigate as many of those as possible. Some of these things are free, some of these things are low cost, and the hope is that they're sort of upcycling things that are already in your grocery budget. So keep that in mind. If you don't have access to these, you don't buy these things yourselves, talk to neighbors, talk to family members, visit a recycling center and see what you can take home. These are some great ways to upcycle things that are already in our system, which makes them more sustainable, while giving you some good, cost-effective, short-term food storage. All right, so the first one is one you'll have definitely seen, and that is to take an empty juice bottle or soda pop bottle and fill it with your dried goods. So I'm going to show you, I have some of my dried beans. Now I cook with dried beans, so when I'm not canning them, I do occasionally cook with them. And so I have them in short-term storage here in a glass jar. But if you don't want to buy a big half-gallon glass jar, you can store them short-term in plastic. Now, here are some things I want you to think about as you are looking for, purchasing, and upcycling your plastic. The first one is that you need to make sure that it is something that you have cleaned really, really, really well, okay? It needs at the very least hot, soapy water, and it needs to be completely dry. And if there's a really strong smell, you might want to re-clean it, okay? Because the smell can transfer. So you want to clean it. If you have bleach or OxyClean or anything like that that's a little bit heavier duty, that would be a good place to use it. Of course, use gloves and be cautious around pets and children. But using a plastic bottle like this, or like a soda bottle, so a Coke bottle, Sprite bottle, even the green tinted ones like you might get from Mountain Dew, or a brown tinted one. I think sometimes root beer comes in brown tinted plastic bottles. These are great ways to upcycle something you might already be purchasing and to use them for food storage. Couple of notes: you cannot ever use milk bottles, okay? I know that gallon milk jug looks really useful, and there are some people who will tell you you can use it, but they're lying to you. You cannot properly clean out of the pores of the plastic the milk fats, and that will cause your food to spoil, okay? That will cause it to have bacteria and spoil, and you do not want to risk the money you have just spent on putting dried beans or rice or lentils or sugar or salt or flour or whatever you're gonna put in here. You do not want to spoil it by taking a shortcut. So don't use milk, don't use anything with dairy or non-dairy, right? Don't use almond milk or oat milk or any of those. Don't bother with that. Stick with a juice, right? A juice or a soda, okay? And really, really clean it, and it needs to be completely dry. Let it air dry for at least 24 hours. You do not want any moisture. If there's any moisture, it will cause your food to mold, and you'll have just lost everything you put in here. So you want totally dry. I actually left the label on here so you could see that I buy 100% organic apple juice. We tend to get it from Aldi, and I am going to repurpose this. So here's what it looks like. This is my half gallon of beans. It will fill up this half gallon of apple juice. And then you just put the lid on it, and then you need to write the date that it went in here. You really don't want these to sit for more than 6 months, maybe a year, and then you are going to want to transfer them out of the plastic and into something else. But this is a very space saving, right? This is space saving, and in fact, in a lot of ways, this is going to be able to be stacked better than these round jars. So these are very space saving. They're very cost effective because if you're already buying apple juice or other kinds of juices, you're already paying for this. You're already paying for the product inside the plastic, and now you're just reusing the container. Just remember, this is clear. So the enemy for this is going to be light, and it's going to be heat. You don't want this to be near any place that's going to get very hot. So do not store this in a garage or an attic. Do not store this like under a bed near a heating vent or anything like that. The plastic will corrode, and it will begin to melt and absorb into your beans and potentially expose them to air if the corrosion is large enough to create air pores. So we don't want to do that. We want to store them in a dark place. So maybe the top of a closet, maybe if you have a pantry where there's some space, keep this nice and tight. And as long as you don't have rodents that can eat through the plastic, this is going to serve you very well as a basically free item to create your short-term food storage. All right, my second recommendation is in the same vein as the plastic bottle, and that is to use glass, okay? That is to use glass. Now these are full. I'm showing you what they would be full, and then you would just use up your sauce and put beans in here, or put rice in here, or put salt in here, or whatever it is that you might be buying in bulk or buying over the course of time, and do the same thing, fill them the same way. This little jar functions like this big jar, it's just smaller. But the benefit of this little jar and this little jar, right, a salsa jar, these are literally from my shelves, so I'm showing you what you could then turn them into, right? The benefit of these little jars is you wash them out, you clean off the label, and you have an empty jar. And this empty jar can have anything put in it. Now I wanna make a couple of caveats. If you're a pressure canner, do not pressure can with commercial cans, commercial jars, because these are not designed to withstand at-home pressure canning, okay? That's not what they're designed for, so you don't want to do that in case it explodes. But if you're just putting dry goods in here, flour, rice, quinoa, lentils, anything like that, you just fill it up, stick it in the back, you put the lid on, and there you go. These glass jars are good because unlike the plastic, they defend against pests better. It's a much harder thing for a rodent or a bug or even a pet to get into the glass. They could potentially, a rodent could potentially gnaw at this plastic. That's the downside to plastic, okay? But they cannot gnaw through the glass. Now the glass can break, the glass can shatter, but If you have it in a secure environment, glass is nice because you don't have to worry about the rodent aspect if that is of particular concern for you. So you just wash these out, like I said. You want to do a really good clean job. These are a little bit more forgiving if you had like an Alfredo sauce that has dairy in it. Glass doesn't have the same kind of pores as plastic does. So it doesn't, you can wash these out really, really well. You do want to try to get the smell out if at all possible. So be careful with like your dill pickle jars. For example, you might really want to soak, use lemon juice, use maybe even bleach to get the smell out, because the smell will transfer, and we don't want our rice to taste like dill pickles. That would be less than ideal, right? That would be less than ideal. So really clean these out, really make sure the scent is gone if at all possible, and then when they're totally dry, you just fill them up, stack them on a high shelf, stack them under a bed where there's no vents where they can get hot, and you just collect these. And when you get to a critical mass, or when you feel good and you can start saving up to purchase your Mylar and your food storage, then you can dump them all out, do your food storage, and then start refilling these as needed. So these are a great short-term solution for dried goods. All right, my third recommendation is one that really fits in the first category, but isn't one you see recommended a lot, and that is going to be a protein powder, collagen powder, workout powder kind of mix. Some of you guys are workout, or people who work out, and they have these nice white, you want the white, not the clear, or you can do the all black kind of containers that way. This is collagen peptides. Their workout powder comes in. These are food grade. And what is nice about these compared to this plastic right here is that this is not see-through, and it's going to be harder for rodents to eat through this, okay? This is a very thin plastic. This is a much thicker plastic, and it is designed to keep light out. It is designed to keep moisture out, because these are a more expensive investment. So this is a great tool to upgrade, to upcycle. If you work out and you have whey protein, the whey protein, big canisters of protein isolate, or if you have the big canisters of, different kinds of powders, or if you know someone, so maybe you don't, but maybe you have a neighbor that does, or someone at work who does, or their kid does, they could save a few of these for you. You wash them out really, really, really well, okay? You really, really want to wash them out. And then you can reuse them. Now, there is some question about whether or not you can reuse the whey protein isolate because it is a milk product. In my experience, these are a smaller pore of plastic. They're a food grade plastic, and so it's not as much of a problem. But if that's something that bothers you, don't use the whey protein. Use ask for the collagen peptides, ask for egg protein, ask for pea protein, ask for anything that's not the whey if you're worried about it. But I think if you do a really, really good job disinfecting and it's totally dry, I think you can be able to repurpose those. Now, these are not long-term. You don't want to keep your food stored in there for more than a year. It will begin to pick up on any of that remaining residue of scent in there. So intend that any of these plastic items are going to need to be switched out within a year or less. Okay, let's say you've bought the big bag, you've bought the 20-pound bag, you've bought the 50-pound bag, and these are great, but that's a lot of jars to cover a 50-pound bag of oats or rice or something. What can you do? Where can you get some cheaper items to give you some stopgaps while maybe you're saving up to purchase the Mylar and the oxygen absorbers? So my recommendation is that you make friends with your local grocery store or bakery. I got this ages ago. I haven't actually used it yet, from our local Kroger, and they gave it to me for free. Now, some places, because these are becoming more in demand, you can see that this is just a giant icing tub, they are actually charging, but the last place I saw, they were charging $2 per bucket, okay? These are going for about $7 on Amazon, like a 5-gallon bucket is. So that's a good savings, okay? So maybe once a week you go and you buy the $2 bucket and the $2 bucket and the $2 bucket. Then you have a nice selection of buckets. If it's food grade and you've washed it out, now this is a little bit dirty from moving because we put moving stuff in it. I haven't actually used it for food storage yet. But if you wash it out really, really, really well, you're gonna need to scrub it out if it has icing or honey or whatever other residue in there. But these are designed for food bucket security. In a pinch, you don't need the Mylar. You can put stuff directly into a food grade bucket of this size. The downside is that if the seal at all busts, you don't have any protection against rodents, you don't have any protection against moisture, you don't have any protection, you can't make it airtight, which kills the microscopic larvae. So I would say one of these without Mylar is still a short-term food storage option. It's not a long-term option, okay? It's not a set it and forget it option. But it's a good short-term option while you're saving up for the Mylar to go ahead and see if you can get some of these icing containers or other food containers from a local grocery store. Like I said, I got this from a Kroger. I think Costco has them. If you have a local bakery in town, where I just moved, there was a wonderful little donut place that sold these for like $1.50 a piece, and they would just save them, and they'd let you know like Thursdays is when we get rid of all of our buckets and we sell them if people want them, and we recycle them if not. And that was a great place to go and get them, and you're supporting a small business. So get to know your local bakeries, get to know your local grocery stores, any place that does large batch food. If you have a restaurant in your area and you know that they get big things like this, or you can ask around, go ahead and see if you can get these for free or for very cheap. If it's $3 or less, you're getting them at a good price, and you can maybe put it in your budget to a couple times a month go buy a $3 bucket. Over the course of 6 months, if you were able to buy, a $3 bucket every month, you have six $3 buckets. Now you can take a couple of months to save up for the Mylar, and then you can have your long-term food storage all ready to go in less than a year. So think about it that way. Think about it in incremental steps. So these can be free or very, very cheap, okay? And this is what one of them looks like, and I'm not currently using it. And I like these because they have a nice handle. Like, these are meant to be carried around. And then this was an icing bucket, okay? You can see here, this was an icing bucket, and I use this right now for rice. This is my everyday in the pantry rice bucket, and I'm actually gonna be upgrading this pretty soon. But right, like I have my rice in here right now. See, rice. And it has this really good snap-on lid. You do want to make sure you get the lids, okay? You do want to make sure you get the matching lids, because you can't order lids online, or it'd be very difficult to order lids online to match these kinds of food grade buckets. But this is food grade, right? So I can put my food storage directly in here. Now this is short term because I am constantly taking rice out of this. This is not long term. So I've gotten down to the very bottom and refilled it, and down to the very bottom and refilled it. So this is, for me, a very short term solution. But let's say you want to do a long term solution. Put your rice in here for a short period, and then while you're getting the larger buckets, you can save up for that. You can then save up and get your Mylar. There's a lot of ways to manipulate, and this for me was totally free. So gotta love free. So I've given you a couple of different ideas for how you can take your short-term food storage, how you can store what you want to eventually be long-term food storage for a short while you're saving up. Here are some ideas for what that can look like, because you're gonna have to create some kind of cycling system. It's gonna mean having some forethought, okay? You're gonna have to plan ahead. But if you're on a fixed income, if you have a very small budget, you're going to need to look at what it would cost roughly to get the Mylar and the oxygen absorbers, maybe the gallon buckets, maybe not. It will depend upon what you can get for free in your town, so you have to do some investigations. It may mean getting 1 gallon Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers, and then just stacking as many as you can in here, sealing it up and going that way, and not waiting for the large 5-gallon bucket. You don't have to do the large 5-gallon bucket. You can do a 1-gallon Mylar bag or quarts, seal them up with an oxygen absorber, and then put them in a free or a cheap food grade storage container, or in the short term, a non-food grade storage container. We do like food grade because it gives us redundancy. If the bag breaks, the plastic it's against is food grade, so it won't leach into your food. Okay. You can create the step system. If a giant 5-gallon bucket is just way out of your reach, see if you can afford those smaller Mylar bags. See if you can store a bunch of these. You could even put these in one of those food storage buckets out of the way until you can transfer them See if you can meet your goal to have 1 week, 2 week, a month of your dried good food storage, and then pause that, save your money that you were spending on the actual food to put towards buying 2 or 3 buckets, the 1 pack of Mylar and oxygen absorbers, smaller Mylar bags that you can then just put in the buckets you already have, even if it doesn't maximize space. These are ways that you can be creative and that you can create a step-up process. You don't have to have all of your emergency preparedness just the way you see folks online doing it. Do I have the 5-gallon buckets with the big Mylar bags? Yes, I do. But that's because I've had the disposable income that has allowed me to do that. If you don't have that kind of disposable income, slowly and incrementally work your way up. If you're already buying pasta sauce, just make sure you buy it in a glass jar, wash that jar out, fill it with some of your food storage, collect them, talk to all of your family members and see if you can come and take all of their empty glass jars for a couple of weeks. Then go out and buy your rice, your beans, your lentils, your quinoa, and then fill up as many jars as possible, put them in the back shelf, and then wait a couple of weeks, do that again, and create this cyclical process. At the end of the day, you have to find a process that works for you. Remember my mantra, progress, not perfection. Your perfection might be a dozen beautiful 5-gallon buckets in this wonderful emergency preparedness pantry room. But you know what? I don't have a pantry room. And you have to make compromises as you move forward, getting towards that more perfect space. Friends, I hope that this was helpful. Leave any comments down below. Let me know if you have any thoughts or if you have any different resources for storing that I didn't think of beyond the jars and the different plastic totes. I'd love to see what you in this community come up with. You're so creative, so let's share all of our information together. And don't forget that it is September, which means it's Emergency Preparedness Month. And if you have been meaning to do a jump on your emergency food storage, you want to get a 1 month of a mid-tier pantry ready to go. You don't want to have to worry about it. You don't want to have to buy expensive mail order freeze-dried food. I have the perfect course for you. It is linked down below. It is videos. I walk you through everything. I give you everything to create a meal plan of food your family already eats so that you can go out, get your food storage, and have it set and ready to go. 1 month of food storage in just 1 weekend. There is no better deal than that, right? So if you're interested, I will make sure that that is linked down below. It is the food storage in a weekend course. As always, I hope you guys are doing so well, and until the next video, happy prepping.